I'm Catherine Reid Day, host of the St. Paul Forum, and coming up next, I'm speaking with Wooj Byun, author, lawyer, and Rotarian. Welcome, Wooj. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
We met originally because someone invited me to the Rotary in Edina, and I learned that you had been the president there for quite some time, and I was really intrigued by your story. We met and talked about the fact that you wanted to write a book, and you've done it. You've got your book done.
Yes.
So what is it that made you decide you wanted to tell your story?
Basically, my book is about Rotary's motto, which is service above self. I thought somehow both Rotarians and non-Rotarians, for that matter, could use this spirit in their daily lives. So I wanted to share that message with a large number of people. That's basically why I wrote this book.
Great. Well, it's a great message, obviously, and but let's talk a little bit about how it was that Rotary became so important in your life. You were in Korea. You were finished your preliminary education, and you decided to come to America.
Yes. Basically, I finished all my education in Korea, but I wanted to somehow broaden my horizons by going overseas. That's when I discovered about this Ambassadorial scholarship offered by Rotary International. So I applied for it, and I received the scholarship, and I ended up coming to study at the University of Minnesota Law School.
So is that unusual? I mean, I think about Rotarian scholarships. I think of them for students coming out of high school to go to college. Was it unusual to do the graduate school process, or is that also common?
Rotary Scholarship started in 1947, at the end of the Second World War. A few good people called Rotarians thought somehow we should exchange young scholars to avoid any further misunderstanding among nations. It was a very humble beginning at the beginning. Only 10 students were chosen, but the next 60 years or so, the number growing to over 40,000 beneficiaries from 120 different countries. I am
40,000 a year, or 40,000
40,000 in total.
In total,
yeah,
okay.
Every year, I think it was something like 12 to 1,500 scholars. It's a large number. I am one such humble recipient of the scholarship.
And at the time that you discovered the scholarship, I mean, I'm guessing it was before much internet, if anything. How did you find out about the scholarship?
I knew of the scholarship, but I didn't know how to apply, and I had no idea about the Rotary back then. I was desperate enough to try many different sources, and Rotary was one of them. And when I had the interview, they said, oh, you are the kind of person we were looking for. So there was a meeting of the two minds, and I was very happy.
What do you think, so you said the word desperate. What was the desperation? Was it your family circumstances, your desire? What was the desperation from your perspective?
My parents are very humble people. They didn't have much money to support me to go overseas. So money was definitely an issue for me. And particularly when you go overseas, the first year is the most difficult part. That's why Rotary supporting me for the entire first year meant so much for me.
Did you already have your language skills? I mean, you were going to come and study law, so did you have the English language mastered before you came?
I studied linguistics, and I studied law as well, but the law in Korea is totally different from law in the US. And my English I learned was from mostly textbook. I'll give you an example. When I first came here, that was August 15th, 1990, my American roommate took me out to a nice restaurant in Minneapolis. As soon as we finished dinner, we stepped outside, it suddenly began to rain. And I assumed it was an American slang word for rain. And every time it rained, I said, and people seemed to understand me perfectly well. It took several months before I heard another word from my roommate who said, hey, Wooj, don't you think this is? I looked outside to make sure it was heavy rain or shower. It was a sunny day. So I looked up the dictionary to find out the meaning of all these words.
So the colloquialism hadn't dawned on you yet at that point?
Not yet.
And it didn't get you into serious trouble, that was what you were always saying?
Not really. I tried to avoid from those colloquialisms.
So you came and enrolled. What part of Korea did you grow up in? Where?
I grew up in Busan, Korea, the second largest city, which, by the way, has 5 million people in that small city. Then I went to college in Seoul. So I grew up in those two big cities.
And so coming to the United States, you selected the law school. How did that, you do write into your scholarship where you wanted to come, or did they select for you?
The scholarship will be given to me no matter what, to the school I go to. I applied to 15 different law schools, and University of Minnesota Law School happened to be one of the best, which accepted me.
Nice. So here you were, with this, I'm kind of curious, where did that idea, to go back to the very beginning, this idea of service over self, had that been instilled in you from your family, or was that something that you began to pick up because of getting to know about Rotary?
As soon as I finished the law school, as soon as I began to make money, I was wondering how that was possible for me. I decided to pay back to Rotary International. So I contacted Rotary International in Evanston, near Chicago, Illinois. When I suggested that I want to pay back $23,000 in scholarship I received in 1990, the person who received my phone call said, nobody has ever offered to return the scholarship, but if you have the burning desire to pay back, why don't you join Rotary and help other young scholars go overseas? So I thought maybe I can do that much at least. So I joined the Rotary, and I tried to help other young scholars go overseas. In the meantime, I learned from hundreds of other good Rotarians what service above self means.
Well, I think that's a very big topic, so we're going to have to dive into it. But the very next thing I want to think about is, you were, when I think of Rotary, and I think a lot of people think of Rotary, I don't personally identify with it as a woman. You know, it was a men's club for a long time. It is no longer, I will hasten to say. It's integrated for women. Am I right that it started out as just men? Correct. And it didn't start out with much diversity. And my recollection of when I first met you was, here you were the first a person of color, a person from a different country leading a Rotary. And you held that position for a long time, didn't you? I mean, it was many years you were.
Well, Rotary presidency is just a 1 year.
It's just a 1 year.
But I served as a board member and officers
so you've been
many years.
Yeah. And that was one of the things I enjoyed when I met you, is I thought, this is a fresh voice, you know, at Rotary. And I'd just like you to speak a little bit about that, because, you know, our world is very diverse, and our community is, and I'm just kind of curious how you look at that.
Yes, Rotary International started in 1905, so it has been out there over 110 years. But women started to join Rotary only, to my recollection, only 20, 30 years ago. So it took a long time for Rotary to become diversified in its membership. When I joined, I may have been the first ever Asian person to join our club. But now things are much more open to diverse people to join. And next thing Rotary International is very interested in is next generation. It has been rather old people. Now, without younger generation joining in, the organization doesn't have much future. So we're trying to recruit more younger folks, either men or women.
What is the message to them? Why would we want to participate, from the standpoint of what's the message that keeps that fresh for people?
Rotary does a lot of things. For example, polio eradication has been a big part of Rotary. It started about 20 years ago. Basically, every day, somewhere between 700 to 1,000 kids were dying of polio.
In the world.
In the world. So Rotarians, something like 1.2 million Rotarian members around the world thought this might be the biggest problem mankind has ever faced with. So we thought, even though the change may take painstakingly slow progress, still we have to make efforts. Otherwise, all the children may die in the whole African continent. So the next 20 years, something like $2 billion were raised by Rotarians around the world.
$2 billion?
$2 billion.
Wow.
Now, in 2011, I had a chance to participate in Rotary International Conference. We have an annual conference every year. 2011, it took place in New Orleans. The plenary speaker was Bill Gates. He said something like, he cannot think of any better partner in fighting mankind's biggest problem than Rotary International. So he committed $550 million from Bill Melinda Gates Foundation to become Rotary International partner in fighting polio. Now, there were only
powerful.
4 countries where polio was still rampant. Among the 4, India became polio-free in 2012.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so a lot of beneficiaries are young people. Now, young people's problem could be solved by young people too. Older folks who started Rotary, very active today, will be gone very soon. So we need a younger generation who will continue the lofty fight and still find other problems in the future to improve the world into a slightly better place.
That's very inspiring. I don't know if you remember this, but my mother had polio when she was carrying me.
I didn't know that.
So, and I just celebrated a birthday, so when I think about the fact that she was next to a person in an iron lung,
I see.
Hospitalized, it was a very mild case. So,
I see.
So for me, it's very visceral, polio. It's very abstract to so many people. I remember it, and it's part of my family story. I agree with you. I think it's extremely powerful. Is there another movement that's a huge piece of work? And so, I'm just kind of curious. So it's down to which countries now? It's 2 countries left?
Only 3. I
It's down to
believe
3?
India became free.
Yeah.
Nigeria, Pakistan, Afghanistan.
And
Yeah.
So interesting. And what I think is so interesting about this is you really started talking about Rotary around peacemaking. It's based on the idea of relationship. And I guess I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what does this mean to you, this relationship that it's about knowing each other. How does Rotary exhibit that, knowing one another across, that's the part that kind of confuses me about Rotary, if I can be honest with you.
Yes. As I said earlier, the Ambassadorial International Scholarship I received started in 1947. 1946 was the year when, if you think about it, everybody would have lost something
And you're referring
the
to World War
Second
II.
World War II, right? I mean,
The
people would have
Second World
lost
War
their,
II, yeah.
people would have lost their family members, their houses, schools, hospitals, churches, factories, you name it, right? But a few good people called Rotarians scraped what little money was left, and they launched this scholarship. It's very interesting that when people had the toughest time, came up with the best solution. They thought to achieve peace among different nations, we should exchange young scholars. So the next year, 1947, about 10 scholars were chosen from 10 different countries. Now, the next 60 years saw 40,000 scholars
Yeah, that's
exchanged
fantastic.
all over the world. And today, many of them became high-ranking government officials, authors, politicians, military leaders, nonprofit organization leaders, you name it. And we have alumni association too.
Okay.
So we have a worldwide network of Rotary Scholarship recipients who are contributing back to world peace.
Wonderful. If you're just joining us, I'm speaking with Wooj Byun about his book about his Rotarian experience. So that is really powerful. That message is just, it is staggering. I mean, it's really about individuals who can make the change. It's the classic line. It's be the change you want to see, and the idea of a small group of people who can make the only changes we can make.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about why you decided to tell this story and what your goals are related to, because you now have this, have told this story in your book about how you came here and you've stayed. Talk a little bit about that storytelling.
Basically, I'm in law practice, right? So I'm providing legal service. And the first word I heard when I joined the Rotary was service. And I thought, aren't we all in some sort of service? You know, as parents, we provide service. As a professional, I provide service. At churches, we provide service. But then I also heard another expression, which is service above self. So I began to think between two different concepts. One is a service. One is a service above self. So when I provide my legal service, in return, I get paid. So when you provide a service, usually it comes from your brain, and you expect something of equal value in return. But when you provide a service above self, usually it comes from your heart, and you don't expect anything in return. So there is a big distinction. So I wanted to share my discovery with other people, what service means, what service above self means. Service above self, because it comes from your heart. At one point or another, you would have felt the pain of the person you provide the service for. And that pain turns into love, and that love turns into and triggers service above self. Service above self could be compared to an oyster painfully developing a beautiful pearl in its soft flesh. There is some pain element in it. That's why you never forget about it, and you provide the service, and you never expect anything in return.
Now, the reference to the pearl is that there's a bit of sand inside that shell.
Okay.
Right? Is that
Yes.
Is that how a pearl is formed? I mean,
Right.
I'm just want to fill it in
I
for
think
the
you're
audience.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that pain, if you will, is that speck of sand that stays inside and accumulates, and it's through that accumulation that this beautiful pearl is formed. That's the reference for you?
Yeah, and it's a foreign object, basically,
It's
growing in your body, you know?
So that's the pain part.
You withstand that pain, but the result is beautiful.
Well, and so when you, I mean, what's the pain that you have translated into this service over self for you?
In my case, even after receiving the scholarship, to be honest with you, I didn't know a whole lot about Rotary. But after joining Rotary, after watching hundreds of other Rotarians, all in service above self, I thought perhaps I should be in that line of business too. In the year 2007, in a summer camp, I saw this boy who had a malformed arm, very short arm with only one finger. It was at the end of the summer camp, they had a program whereby they were supposed to form a circle and dance and sing together. I'm talking about 5, 6-year-old kids. But because of this boy having short arms and one finger on each hand, the kids next to him refused to hold the hands, and therefore the circle didn't form. They didn't sing, they didn't dance. There were about 1,000 parents who witnessed the whole thing. I was one of them. I felt pain when I saw that. And I thought perhaps I should take it as my personal project to bring some inspiration to this boy. If I didn't join Rotary, maybe it was one of those, quirky things in life. But after joining Rotary, it became my personal project. So the next whole year, I looked for ways to help this boy. Now, I didn't even know who the boy was, but I happened to see him. And I found a pianist who had similar conditions. She had 2 fingers on each hand, and she played Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu without any effort. I thought perhaps I should bring that pianist to Minneapolis and somehow have a performance where the boy should come. Maybe the boy may find some inspiration in his life. Long story short, I located the pianist who happened to be living in South Korea. So I used all my connections in Korea, and I ended up speaking with her, and I told her, look, I found a boy in Minnesota who has your condition. Would you be willing to come to play piano for him? She said yes. It was the happiest moment in my life, but I didn't know it cost money.
Oh, yeah.
So I turned around and I went to Rotary Club, and I shared the story. 2 Rotarians came over and each gave me $1,000. Hey, Wooj, sometimes lack of money shouldn't be a deterrent. When you have a good project in mind, just go ahead. And if you need more money, let us know. With that kind of encouragement, I raised over $15,000 in less than 1 month. And she came over and performed beautifully. 500 people came to her performance. I announced the performance a lot. I was nervous when the curtain went up. I think it was October 18th, 2008. To my surprise, the boy and all his family members were sitting right on the front row.
Wow.
And at the end of the performance, I made an announcement to everybody why the performance came to be and things like that. And I invited the boy to come onto the stage. The pianist and the boy gave each other a big hug, and we had a wonderful time. So to your question, after joining Rotary, the difference came to me in the sense that whatever I did in my head, I began to do based on my heart, as my heart tells me to do things, which is service above self.
Nice. Well, that is a beautiful story. I hope you've kept track of where the boy is now.
He turned out to be one of my neighbors. Yeah, not too far from me. So we
Okay.
became really good friends.
Nice.
The boy, his name is Michael, I can tell you that much. He plays guitar with his 1 finger, and as I understand, he uses 10 toes to type the computer and things like that.
Wow. Nice.
I think he's a very happy boy today.
That's fantastic. So one of the things that intrigued me, as you know, I'm passionate about stories and helping people tell their stories. It seems as though finishing this book and getting out and telling this has been life-changing for you. This is now one of your new missions. You want to keep telling this story?
Yes. At one point, when I was young, I was after money. A lot of young lawyers are after money.
After money, okay.
Yes, I was after money.
Okay.
I'm not ashamed to tell you.
No.
But then, after a few years, I thought there might be something more than making money in life. That's when I truly embraced service above self, which has to come from love for humanity. In other words, you have to feel the pain in your heart, and that turns into love, and that love triggers service above self. So anyway, since I embraced love for humanity and service above self, I thought perhaps I should share the transformation in me with other people, both Rotarians and non-Rotarians. And a lot of people I spoke to said, you should go ahead, and I want to get a copy of the book. It took several years.
Oh, yeah.
It took about 5 years. But I feel very happy that I finished the project. When I wrote it, I had a small joy. Now, as I share my books, I have a much bigger joy.
Well, and you're spreading an important message, which is in our culture, we do sometimes forget what we're here for, which is to care for one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like the message is reaching people. So you've been invited, I know you've been invited to speak quite a bit. I follow you on Facebook, so I know that this has been important. Where are you next going to be speaking?
Yes, in fact, I was invited to a zone conference, which is a multi-state conference in Wisconsin in September. Next big thing for me is Iowa. The whole district of Iowa invited me to speak on their annual conference on April 18th.
Nice. That doesn't mean you're going to start running for office, does it? You know, everyone who goes to Iowa ends up, you know, getting ready for the presidential race.
I didn't think about it. But,
okay, well
but
now
you gave me some idea.
Now we've given you an idea.
I'll think about it.
It'd be like that movie, you know, Dave, the president. Everyone wished that he were the real president. I don't know if you remember that movie, but anyway. I'd rather have you for president than a lot of people.
Well, thank
because
you.
of what you care for. Obviously, you'd like some people to buy your book. So how do they find out about your book?
It's very simple. All they have to do is just to visit www.myrotaryjourney.com.
MyRotaryJourney.
Yeah, that's the title of my book.
Mm-hmm. And so they can go there. They can invite you to come and speak, obviously.
Sure.
And so what's one last thought you want to leave us with what's your core message that you want to inspire others to do more of?
In 2008, when U.S. stock market crashed temporarily, right? Now it came back nicely, but the next few years, a lot of nonprofit organizations lost their funding, and they had to fire a lot of their staff members. Rotary lost a lot of members too, and young members came over to me and they said, you know, the economy is very difficult for me. I told them to watch a movie called The Best Years of Our Lives. It was made in 1946. Again, 1946 is not the best year. It was barely 1 year after the end of Second World War, right? But the movie was made in 1946. I thought it was a joke. You know, if it is made in 1946, how could it be the best year of anybody's life? The movie is about this American soldier who loses both arms while fighting the Japanese soldiers in the Pacific Ocean. He loses both arms and he comes back to his Midwestern home. He lost all hope in life, becomes a hermit. But gradually he learns how to live his life. He ends up giving hope to other people. So I told a lot of people who complain about the economy, difficult and things like that, to watch this movie, The Best Years of Our Lives. And I want to tell your viewers the same thing. How do you turn this year into the best year of your life? Watch a movie called The Best Years of Our Lives. And another way is to embrace love for humanity, which will trigger service above self. When you help other people, you help yourself.
Lovely. Thank you so much. That's all we have time for. Please join us again next week on the St. Paul Forum.